So, the Russians would have ice slides that were used in like fairs or various other amusement devices, and sometimes they would use these slides for racing. But the structure of it was very large. They were 70 feet high, and they would create bumps at the end, or they would use sand as a way to slow the sled down. Um, they were made in straight lines so that people wouldn't crash. But basically, it required the rider to have a lot of skill because they were also really risky. So basically, the Centrifuge Railway is France's first try at making a loop. And basically, they got the car around the loop by making one side really steep so that the car would have enough momentum and force to go around the loop. And they achieved this. They didn't have a lot of crashes or anything, but they did test it by like using egg cartons or like glasses of water, and I remember reading that one time they even used a monkey to test this out. So the Mauch Chunk Railway was in Pennsylvania, and coal miners used this as a fast way to transport coal from the top of a mountain to a port at the bottom. The max speed was 100 miles an hour, but they usually went 18 miles an hour. The railway was 40 miles long, and at first they used mules to pull the cars up, but eventually they were replaced by motors. When this happened, they used this as a pleasure ride at night, and people paid $1 to go up the mountain and decline. Fast forward to 1884, and the Switchback Railway was created by a famous American inventor, Lamarcus Adney Thompson. This ride was very successful, and he utilized gravity by pushing riders down onto 6-foot hills at 6 miles an hour. This ride only costed 5 cents to ride, but since it was really successful, they earned $600 a day, which would roughly translate to $15,300 today. Scenic railways were used to make people think they were seeing exotic lands. One unique feature about this is that they added brakes to the train instead of having them on the track. This was used to control speeds, and eventually this grew to be called the dark rides. So manufacturers in Pennsylvania played with the design of roller coasters and made rides that kind of resembled a figure eight. So after a few decades of just building new roller coasters and improving on the designs, in the 1920s there were about 2,000 made in the United States, and you could pretty much find one in almost every major city. The larger these wooden roller coasters would get, safety became a primary concern, especially for the American inventor John Miller. He incorporated seatbelts in his rides so that people would be safe. Unfortunately, this was around the Great Depression and World War II, so eventually people just stopped going to amusement parks because they either couldn't afford it or they just didn't really feel like going. and because of this, amusement parks went out of business, and a lot of these wooden roller coasters were demolished. So in the 1950s, the theme park era began. The first one created was Disneyland, and that's in California. Basically, it was home of the first steel roller coaster called Matterhorn Mountain, and this basically created the stigma that steel coasters were for theme parks and wooden coasters were for regular parks, like regular amusement parks. And they became unpopular over time. John Allen wanted to change this, so he created rides that would bring wooden coasters back into the spotlight. He designed this ride at Ilitch Gardens called Mr. Twister, and it became very popular. He also created the Racer in Kings Island. His main idea with this was to prove that wooden coasters can be just as fun as steel roller coasters are in theme parks. 3 years later, the ride Corkscrew was created at Cedar Point. What was special about this ride was the fact that it was the first successful inverting roller coaster. It had 2 inversions built into it, which were later called corkscrews. This ride was mainly focused on the fact that it could go upside down. Soon, coasters incorporated loops along with corkscrews. In the mid-1980s, ironically, coasters were invented for people to stand up to make fun of the no standing signs on other rides. In 1992, the first successful inverted roller coaster was born. Now we have roller coasters breaking world records, such as Kinda Ka in Six Flags Great Adventure, New Jersey, with the tallest drop at 418 feet. There's still Dragon 2000 in Nagashima Spa Land in Japan, making it the longest roller coaster in the world at 8,133 feet. And Formula Rossa at Ferrari World in Dubai, making it the fastest coaster at 141.1 miles per hour. From a physiological standpoint, coasters release certain hormones in our brain that make us feel the way we do before, during, and after the ride. Endorphins help the release of dopamine, which causes the euphoric feeling we get during the ride and for hours afterward. And adrenaline gives us a shaky feeling that we feel during the ride and after, and it also is what gets our heart pumping. Every roller coaster in the world is built uniquely different from the one before it. Though the idea is the same, each ride brings something slightly new to the table based on their design. It's like art. There are different periods for it, but the art within these periods share similar qualities and build from each other as time goes on.